survival, but others less so, and those are the ones we need to really interrogate.
Esther Webber from The Times. Now, we've been living with the coronavirus for over a year, but one aspect still poorly understood is why some people develop long COVID. It's become the catch-all term for several different diseases. One symptom many experience is brain fog, where people struggle with even simple mental tasks, and understanding why that happens could help thousands of sufferers, as well as improve our knowledge of how other viruses affect us too. Chris Wimpress has been looking at the condition.
When I was particularly bad, I was only able to concentrate for about 20 minutes at a time.
Richard Campbell is a consultant rheumatologist from London. He's been living with the after effects of the coronavirus for nearly a year.
I was working in the A&E department and the acute medical unit and probably caught COVID there, I think. During the acute phase, I had regular fevers, severe muscle pain throughout my body, and very severe headaches with dizziness and vertigo. I was unwell in the acute phase for about 4 weeks. Then I thought I was better, went back to work, and then became more unwell about 2 months after that.
His long COVID symptoms are sometimes summed up as brain fog.
Difficulty finding words in conversation, for example, people's names. The other problem was not being able to focus for long periods of time. I can remember sitting working on a spreadsheet and just not being able to focus on the numbers and the calculations I needed to make. I just couldn't force my brain to continue working.
Was there a moment where you thought, this is long COVID in action?
It was actually my GP who signposted me to long COVID. I hadn't heard of it at that point.
Richard was referred to the National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery, part of University College Hospital, London. I went to meet Dr. Hadi Manji, one of its consultants, who believes as many as 1 in 10 people who catch COVID experience a long road to recovery.
If we say 4 million people have had COVID in the UK, of those, about 10% may have symptoms of long COVID. That'll include cardiac, respiratory, and neurological. So we're talking about 400,000 people, at least. Of these, a number will be neurological.
Research into the effects of long COVID on the brain is still in the relatively early stages. Dr. Manji says they're exploring several possible explanations.
One of them being a chronic low-grade inflammation, which is carrying on in the body and maybe in the brain. The other things that one's thinking about is whether the mitochondria, which are the powerhouses of all the cells, are affected in some way. And this is what all the research is focusing on, is what is the mechanism, and that's being done by setting up clinics so we can see patients, seeing the patients, doing the tests, looking for evidence of this activation of the immune system. And then one can work on treatment options.
There's increasing consensus that we've seen something similar to this before, back in the late 80s and early 90s when thousands of people developed chronic fatigue syndrome, or ME. Attitudes back then were somewhat different and fed into Radio 4 comedy.
After 2 years' research, doctors discover the secret of yuppie flu. We talked to a leading expert.
Well, I would have done more work on it, but I feel tired all the time. I sort of ache all over. I just feel like sleeping, really.
I asked Dr. Manji if he saw parallels between ME and the aspects of long COVID he sees.
I think there was a trigger, most likely a viral cause, which we never got to the bottom of it, and now is our opportunity to delve into all these things in more detail. But there were clues actually from SARS and MERS viruses. Now the numbers were much smaller, 6,000 and 9,000. The other important factor which we have to learn is that I think patients are going to need to be followed up long term.
For Richard, the treatment has given him his life back.
The medical treatments are treatment of my headache with sumatriptan and beta blockers. I've been taking antihistamines as well. I've had treatment for mood problems, and I've also been doing non-medical things such as making sure I get daily daylight, doing very light yoga, which is run by a woman who has long COVID herself, and recuperating and resting. And I can't emphasize how important resting is to avoid further problems and relapses of symptoms.
But while Richard now expects to make a full recovery, he is aware that many people so far have not. He urges people with similar symptoms to get help and, importantly, get some rest.
Chris Wimpress reporting on long COVID there. Now, just a reminder before we go of our main headlines. The Institute for Fiscal